I'm Joe D'Angelo. I look after our broadcast radio business. And Xperi is probably not a household name over here, so just real quick. We have a broad range of technologies. We are a publicly traded company in the US. We have some very familiar brands here, though. DTS, you may know for audio processing. We've expanded that brand recently over the last couple of years to include some of our automotive technologies. We have the HD radio system, which is the terrestrial digital radio standard in North America. TiVo, I'm sure you all know it, have used it. A real powerhouse behind video, audio, and radio metadata. And then we have All In Media, a local company here in London that actually builds apps and data management platforms for many of you in the room. They support about 10,000 radio stations around the world. But what makes Xperi unique is we really do sit at the intersection of broadcast and automotive. We have a 22-year history of integrating technologies in cars with every major brand around the world, specifically focused on enhancing the radio experience. We have over 125 million cars on the road right now, and we work with the entire supply chain. And this is really critical as you think about the evolution of broadcast radio and the challenge to innovate quickly and keep up with big tech. But I was actually asked to come here and talk about personalization and recommendation. So if you all think about personalization and recommendation in the video space, I bet Netflix is either the top or at least in the top 2 or 3 platforms that you think about. And Netflix has made personalization and recommendation critical to their whole business. And the primary reason is to reduce churn and increase engagement with their content. So much so that their chief content officer recently said their brand is personalization. It's critical to the success of their business. And I found this personally very interesting because I was one of those early adopters who used to mail in DVDs every couple weeks and try to get in the queue for the latest hits. And I noticed back in the 90s they were recommending titles to me. But I kind of ignored them. I would be really just after the hits, and their content library is pretty small. And only about 2% of the people back in the 90s actually acted on those recommendations. Now, 80% of the people act on those recommendations. Totally different platform, obviously, all digital, all immediate. And I really found this interesting, that if a user who starts Netflix doesn't make a selection in 90 seconds, they're going to leave the platform for another media source or maybe just walk away from the TV or tablet. I think this is critical because consumers want content, they want relevant content, and they want it very, very quickly. So we can only speculate what that 90 seconds will translate into the car around radio, but I believe it's going to be a lot shorter. So how do they do this? It's through a deep understanding of their content catalog and their audience. So they have about 17,000 titles, highly curated, rich metadata, very descriptive, detailed information about actors and directors and genres and themes, so they know a heck of a lot about the programming that they can offer. They also happen to know a heck of a lot about their audience, the households, the number of viewers, the viewing habits, the location, the language. They put all that together into an incredibly sophisticated machine learning, artificial intelligence engine that will spit out recommendations and hopefully retain those listeners or those viewers in those 90 seconds. So the real question is, if this is what it takes to do personalization and recommendation, how in God's name can radio hope to match that? Radio is fantastic, but radio is a network, a loose network, of independent audio services around the world. You don't know exactly who your listeners are, you don't know what their listening habits are, and it's very hard to predict what radio stations are actually going to be broadcasting at any point in time. But we at Xperi believe personalization is possible, and I'm going to show you how we deliver it in our independent media platform we call DTS AutoStage. This is a hybrid radio system that has been developed over the last 3 years in collaboration with automakers, tier ones, and broadcasters, and it basically combines the best of broadcast with everything that IP can deliver. We're launched in 150 countries, and we support over 85,000 different radio stations, analog, DAB, CDR, HD radio. And this is what it looks like. These were pictures we took in front of the BBC last week. You can see a great carousel of logos for the combined FM and DAB station. There's also a list of favorites where the logos are always present. We deliver high-resolution logos to supplement the over-the-air broadcast logos from DAB. We are one of only 2 licensed music metadata distributors, Xperi or TiVo and GraceNote, so we can deliver fully licensed album art. And as Lindsay mentioned, we've recently launched lyrics. So here you are listening to 6 Music. You can see the artist who's playing. If you're interested, you can then get the lyrics. Again, we are the only one in the world with this field of use to deliver lyrics associated with broadcast radio into the car. So all of that provides a context for the platform that we are building on to enable recommendations and personalization. And we're doing it through an exhaustive study over the last 3.5 years of all the radio stations literally around the world. We have been studying not what they say they're playing or what genre they say they fit into, but what are they actually playing. And we monitored over 2 billion hours of radio programming to create that catalog, that index that can be used to recommend radio stations to listeners. And since we're at the WorldDAB Summit, I wanted to highlight that we do support all DAB stations, 30 countries, close to 3,000 different services, over 6,000 different broadcast, basically multiplexes. Now let's talk about the listener. So we know a lot about radio. We built this network. We're understanding what you're broadcasting around the world. But our system has been designed and deployed to understand where the listener is, what they're listening to, and how those habits change over time. So what you're seeing here is a heat map of all the cars around the world that are connected to our system. This is for the last week, and how much they are receiving in terms of data from our system. 3.7, if you were at the BBC event last week, that number was 1.8 billion. And that's important because that number indicates our understanding, our level of understanding of what listeners are actually tuning to and how long they are spending with radio. As that number increases, the granularity of our understanding gets better and better so we can provide much better, deeper recommendations. We take all of that data and we deliver it back to the broadcasters free of charge. There's no charge for a broadcaster to be on our platform. We take your data on board, we deliver it with editorial integrity, and then we return back to you detailed analytics and metrics for how your audience is engaging with your stations. What you're seeing here is a share chart for one of the largest UK broadcasters, and we're showing, if I could remove that station list cover, you'd see a list of all their stations and the relative share of each of those stations during this period, which I think is the month of September. We also measure and provide, again, back to broadcasters, the exact count of the number of vehicles that are listening to each of your distribution points, whether it's analog, FM, or DAB. And I'll give you an example. I get this question all the time. I got permission from SWR to share this with you. Can you tell me whether they're listening on DAB or FM to my service? And if they are listening to one or the other, which multiplex or which tower? And the answer is yes, we can. For SWR3, you can see exactly all of the distribution points for that service throughout their region, and we can tell you exactly the load on each of those. This is very critical as you make your infrastructure plans and you think about answering that very important question is, does FM matter? The answer is it still does. What's also very exciting, and we're very grateful for the support we've gotten from the broadcast industry, is the growth that we are projecting in the next year. I showed you the 3.6 billion number. That is, again, the number of measurement points where we engage with the vehicle, we understand what they're listening to, we aggregate that information, and we turn it around and give it back to broadcasters so you can better understand your audience, you can understand what they're listening to, how they're engaging with your content. If you're a commercial broadcaster, you can understand basically the reach of any piece of advertising. That number is projected to grow to 93 billion by this time next year. So we're just going to get deeper and deeper into this. And what's behind that is explosive growth in our automotive deployment. We launched this system in 2020 with Mercedes. 2021, we were only on Mercedes. They expanded to 3 vehicle brands. This year, we've expanded to 5 vehicle manufacturers. We're on over 52 models. The blue one that I can't put in writing is Tesla. So Tesla has upgraded all their radios around the world with this system. Hyundai, Genesis, and Kia have also done a over-the-air update, basically updating vehicles that were sold as early as 2018 with this platform. Next year, I show we'll be at 11 brands. I'm happy to say last night we were awarded another contract for launch next summer, so that is actually going to be 12. So this platform is going to proliferate the globe and give you an opportunity to deliver rich metadata, an incredible understanding, and a modern user experience. We take all this, we do something very similar to what I showed you with Netflix. It's a little more complicated because we're dealing with the dynamic nature of broadcast radio, but we're basically doing the same thing. We take an understanding of our audience, we take an understanding of our content, we put that together, and what do we output? Recommendations and personalization. And this is an area of expertise for Xperi. In fact, last night at the Digital Video Awards in town, we received the award for the best consumer experience for video discovery. This is in our DNA. So this is what you can expect to see in next generation radios, where it becomes a personalized experience, keeping the drivers with broadcast radio content and not pushing them off to another platform like Spotify or Pandora. That's it for me. I'm out of time. I apologize, Rosie, for the 60 seconds.